On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Deschutes County and the City Club of Central Oregon, welcome to tonight's forum for LaPine School Board, positions Zone 6 and 7. Our candidate forums are conducted according to league guidelines, and all candidates who have filed for office have been invited to participate. We'd like to thank the candidates who are here this evening and appreciate the gravity of making a decision that is so important to the community of Deschutes County and especially to the students and parents in LaPine school systems. Our moderator this evening is Nicole Vulcan. She is the editor of The Source. And Nicole, would you like to begin?
Yeah, thanks, Carol. I'm Nicole Vulcan. I'm the editor of The Source, as she said, and I'm the moderator for tonight's LaPine School Board at Zones 6 and 7 Candidates Forum. 7 community members make up the LaPine Schools Board of Directors. Board members are elected by voters community-wide and represent the entire school district. However, they must reside in one of 5 zones or be elected at large. So registered voters elect board members for terms up to 4 years. The school board has governance responsibilities in 4 areas: vision, accountability, policy, and advocacy. Board members serve for a 4-year term. This forum is hosting LaPine board candidates for at-large Zone 6, Melissa Barnes-Dholakia, and 7, which includes Elizabeth Justema, Rod Hanson, and Kina Chadwick. The Zone 7 seat will be a 2-year term serving until June 30th, 2025, after which we'll return to a 4-year term. Zone 6 candidate Chet Wamboldt and Zone 7 candidate Nicole Fitch are not able to join us for the forum today. We're going to start with 1-minute opening statements, followed by questions where each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. We have a clock. At the end, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing statements, and candidate order will be rotated during the questions. I have a list of the candidate order. I'm going to do my best to keep to it. I promise I'll give everyone a chance, and I'm going to, take notes for that part. So let's get started. We're going to do opening statements, and first is Melissa. Want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I do. Thank you. First, I want to thank the League of Women's Voters for Deschutes County, as well as City Club, for hosting this forum. It's fantastic to have these nonpartisan forums for a nonpartisan position, so thank you very much. My name is Melissa Barnes-Dholakia, and first and foremost, I am a parent. I represent parents. I am the parent of 2 kids that have gone through LaPine schools. I have a 13-year-old in middle school and a 20-year-old in college, and I had to do a count. But I have actually experienced 6 different schools in our district, so I would consider myself a super parent. I have actually connected with communities across our district. In addition, I am an educator by trade. I've been a parent, worked in a teacher, worked in professional development, have been a co-director or co-superintendent, and I am the current chair of the LaPine School District, where I have been for 2 years, and then the vice chair before that, as well as leading the superintendent search and the last school bond campaign. So I look forward to earning your vote tonight.
Thanks, Melissa. So next up for this question is Kina. Not question, opening statement.
Okay, thanks. Hey there, my name is Kina Chadwick, and my pronouns are they, them. I was appointed to the board in December of 2022. I'm a parent of 2 young children, and I come from a blue-collar family. My father retired from the Air Force, and my mother belonged to a union at our local factory. My siblings and I are also a product of public education, K through 12. And we are first-generation college graduates. You'll find that there's a common thread in the various groups that I volunteer with. They all focus on making Bend better for everyone. I intentionally review programs and policies with a lens of equity, ensuring no decisions are made without the consent of individuals who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, the BIPOC community, and or the disabled community.
Thanks, Kina. Next up for the opening statement is Rod.
Hey, that timer is really cool. It goes quick. So, hey, I'm Rod Hanson. My wife and I moved to Bend in 1978. We've lived in the same house for 45 years now. and we live in the Ben LaPine School District. I had 3 boys. They were raised in the public schools, graduated from Mountain View and Summit. I have 2 grandchildren now in the public schools. I've taught for 47 years in the public schools, public education system, 44 in Central Oregon. I was at Redmond High for 32 years, Central Oregon Community College for 12 years. I told them last spring I was done. I'm now teaching community ed, government, constitution classes. I think it's great to have an experienced teacher and a person who's lived here a long time to be on the board. Thanks.
Thank you. Opening statement finally with Elizabeth.
Hi, thanks for having me. Elizabeth Justema. I just finished teaching over 2,000 students in the Ben LaPine School District. So I've been a high school teacher for the past 10 years. I raised both of my kids here in the Ben LaPine system. I have one in college and one that's a senior. And I've lived in the Ben community for 23 years. Prior to teaching, I spent 18 years in the private sector, mostly in marketing. And I also serve on the office group board, and I also serve as a tutor, and that is for first generation underrepresented students, trying to get them to their next step in life. And I am running because I see a gap in, or just that there isn't a teacher voice on the board today. And I would love to be that connection between the boots on the ground approach and the board discussions. Thanks.
Okay, so this next one is a quick one. We're actually going to start with Elizabeth with this one. How many school board meetings have you attended in the past year?
I have watched them all. I have attended none, but I have watched them and read the documents and notes carefully. Okay,
so next up for this question, Rod.
Same as Elizabeth, watched them online, the Zoom meetings, the streams, but I have not attended any personally, but I've seen the board notes.
Great. Next up for this question, Kina, how many board meetings have you attended this year?
Yeah, so this year I have attended all of them. Prior to me being on the board, I attended probably at least 15, especially when things were a little rough for our board members. I thought it was critical to show support for them, especially in that hard time. So actually I buddied up with some people to make sure I didn't go alone. But yeah, really wanted to show my support for them. Before that, when I first moved to Bend, I watched all the school board meetings. I watched all the city council meetings to know who are the players in our community and what support I could offer.
All right. So finally, on this question, Melissa.
Sure, thanks. I got to do some mental math there, so thank you, Nicole. So in this year, and I will say, I think in school years, I'm an educator, so I always do July to June. And so my math just now was 18. I have attended and chaired 18 board meetings. Again, I've been the board chair. And, you know, if we look at the total, I've been to every board meeting and every board workshop that we've had. I brought back board workshops, quite honestly, because I didn't think that one meeting a month was enough to do the work and actually move it forward. So we, along with Carrie McPherson Douglas, brought back the board workshop so that we'd have 2 meetings a month. And that was so that we had time to really dig into the issues. And I'm all in, I'm always there. And I wish that we actually had more people speaking. I know that we've been hearing that people want more opportunity. People don't come and make board comments. We'd love to hear from you. Please do.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. This one starts with Kina. There is currently a movement to ban books, both in schools and public libraries. Do you support such a movement? If so, what is your criteria for which books should be banned?
Sure. So absolutely not. There's no hesitation whatsoever. Public education is the foundation of our democracy. If it weren't for public education, I wouldn't be here today. Yeah, I mean, banning books is censorship. That's the beauty, for a lot of kids. They may not have the luxury of coming from a loving home or even have books in their homes. And reading books, is a way for them to escape. It's a way for them to envision themselves as older people. So absolutely zero banning, and ensuring everything is age appropriate, of course.
Great, thanks, Kina. We'll go to Rod next on this one. It's a kind of a little bit of a long question, so I'll say it again. There's currently a movement to ban books in schools and public libraries. Do you support it? And if so, what's your criteria for books that would be banned?
No, I don't like the idea of banning books in public libraries or school libraries. However, and I think that the best way to avoid that is to hire the best librarians and media specialists, and media center specialists we can, turn it loose with the principal. I think all books that are stocked in the schools should be online and parents know what are there, but I'm not in favor of banning any books whatsoever, from Catcher in the Rye to the Bible to Huck Finn to all the things that we read in the past and everybody's concerned about now. Just let that be up to our school librarians on age appropriate what they stock and handle individually.
Thanks, Rod. Next up for this question is Elizabeth. Ready to go? Would you like me to repeat it?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thanks, though.
Mhm.
I'm a hard no, absolute. In no world should we be banning books. Books are really meant to expand a kid's world, a child's world, or a young adult's world. It allows them to walk in shoes that they wouldn't normally be able to put on, or something beyond the community they live in. So really essential that we keep all of those doors open to kids. Book banning is just flat out censorship, and who gets to be the censor, right? It might be a certain group right now, and it might be a different group down the road. So there's just absolutely no way to do that. I do think the conversation is interesting for this day and age, because at the library, at the school building I was in, the amount of books keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Given what kids see online and what they're watching, I think what they're reading is like the least of our worlds. I would say hallelujah if they're reading. So that's the only reason I think the conversation is a bit out of tune with reality. But absolutely no one banning books. Thanks.
All right. Melissa is the last one for this question.
Sure. I'll start with a hard no. And then I'm going to take task with this question. I actually think that having this question in the debate is pandering to a very small, very vocal minority. NEA did a survey, and then NPR replicated the survey not once, but twice, and found that 76% of parents want the culture wars out of their schools. 76% of parents think that they're very well informed about the curriculum, including how the schools are teaching diversity, equity, and inclusion, including how they're teaching United States history. Of that remaining 24%, it's not actually all conservative voices. It's about equally split, half people who don't want more inclusion and more belonging reflected in our classrooms, and half who think we're not doing enough. My kid still feels excluded. So this question is actually a real problem for me, because we have a very vocal, very small minority pushing using their voices to push a nationally organized strategy. I don't believe in banning books. I will answer the question. I don't believe in banning books. I think that every child in Ben-LaPine School District deserves to check out a book that reflects their life, that reflects their experiences, that reflects their identity. And for any adult to say that they shouldn't have that opportunity, shame on them.
Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I can understand your perspective of not wanting to talk about things that are less important. I just want to point out, though, these questions were posed by members of the league. So, they're questions that they were bringing and wanted to ask you all. Just want to go right to the next one that you sort of what you brought up as well. We start with Rod on this one. To what extent should the school board members be involved in determining or altering curriculum?
Well, that's a good question. I taught all those years. First of all, a lot of the curriculum we have in the classroom for all the years is set by the state. There are state standards that we had to follow. And so those are, when you taught US history for a year, there were state guidelines that you had to cover. Okay, so I don't think the curriculum from the school board is necessarily to be approved of. I think that's up to each individual school and the principal and the teachers in the school to follow the state guidelines in all their endeavors. And so I think the purpose of the board is to, establish the vision and put together the plan, adopt a plan, and then turn the teachers and the principals loose on the curriculum. So it's that teaching experience that I had for all those years, and you just did what the state said, and you implemented it in your class on your own the best way you could.
Thank you. Okay, so I just quickly, I got a little clarification on my statement earlier. The questions were submitted by the general public and screened by the League of Women Voters. So just to be clear. So we are going next to Elizabeth on this question. To what extent should the school board members be involved in determining or altering curriculum?
I also don't think it's the role of the board to dive into specific curriculum. Again, the superintendent reports to the board. The board is setting the goals and mission and tone for the district. I know there's curriculum adoptions underway that the board looks at. So I think it seems as if everyone is in their proper role. Perhaps there's a checks and balance here. If the district were off the rails or something, there would be a bit of a way to raise a red flag there. But in general, this seems to work fine. And there are not teachers teaching rogue things in the classroom because we do have to follow state guidelines. And the state guidelines really tell us the content, and that Common Core guidelines teach us outline the skills that kids have to have. So between the two, we keep things going. There are a lot of teachers on special assignment, which they're usually one per department. There's a history one and an English one, and they are coordinating within the schools to see what is being taught, lending support, and trying to sort of coordinate those efforts. So I don't see any giant red flags here that are out of place as things stand.
All right. This question goes to Kina next.
Yeah, so, Ben LaPine schools, like others have shared, right? We follow the Oregon Department of Education guidelines. No, I don't think the school board should be responsible for altering curriculum. We have TOSAs out there. We have curriculum experts. This is, you wouldn't go to your doctor's office and say, tell them your prognosis or your, what you need to do to help yourself, I guess. And yeah, like I said, people have dedicated their time, their energy, and resources in doing exactly that. I'm all about evidence-based curriculum. If folks want to know what is being taught in schools, they can go, if they have a Wi-Fi connection and internet, they can go to the websites and they can very easily see what is being taught.
All right, we're at Melissa finally with this one.
Sure, happy to speak to this. Another great opportunity for community engagement. As the board, what we are doing is we are providing oversight of a district. We are not running the district. We are unpaid volunteer civil servants. And there are people that are paid to make those decisions. We make sure that it's done well. In Ben LaPine, I'll use an example. We just adopted, the board just approved a new foundational skills initiative curriculum. I think everybody agrees we want our literacy rates to increase. And this board is really focused on early literacy, on foundational skills. And so we adopted a new literacy program. That program and that adoption was a 2-year process. It included community members, it included teachers, it included parents, it included a large group of people with diverse voices. They reviewed curriculum, they came forward with 3 or 4, I can't remember, recommendations of finalists. They put that curriculum out in the schools, they put it online, we gathered feedback, and then they brought a final recommendation to the board, and the board approved that final recommendation. That's the process we should go through. Notably, I hear a lot of chatter about wanting input on curriculum. We had less than a handful of people who actually looked at the curriculum, including one of the candidates that was supposed to be here tonight. So we have those processes in place.
Thank you. So on this number 5 question, Melissa, you are first. It's a 2-parter. So the question is, what is your opinion on gender affirming care and LGBTQ within our school system? And the second part is, how do you feel about finding ways for LGBTQ folks to compete fairly in sports?
If we could rewind the tape, I'd love to go back to my statement that I made earlier. I know that people submitted it. My request to City Club and the League was not to pander to these people. I said, you're going to get a flood of questions like this from a very small, very vocal group around a national attack. These are the same people that think that CRT is being taught in our schools. Okay? Got a minute left. When I ran for agency, inclusion, and belonging. Period. Our children deserve to experience inclusion and belonging in our schools. I would like to talk to the person who's going to look that 7-year-old in the eye, that transgender 7-year-old that wants to play baseball, and say, no, you can't play baseball. You have to play softball. They've gone to school. They're a boy. They're teachers. They have a male name. But nope, you have to play softball. And when you go to Camp Tamarack when you're in 5th grade, I know you're a boy, but your gender, how you were gender assigned means you have to go sleep with the girls. Shame on them.
All right. This question goes to Kina next. Do you want me to repeat it since it had 2 parts?
Yes, please.
Okay. What's your opinion on gender affirming care within our school system? And how do you feel about finding ways for LGBTQ folks to compete fairly in sports?
Yeah. So, thank you, Melissa, for what you had just shared. And I'd also like to say that, these types of questions are, I don't know if anyone else feels it in the virtual room, but as someone who is queer, as someone who's non-binary, as someone who is a person of color, these are the types of environments and challenges that these types of students experience every day. As an adult, this is what I experience every day. I truly believe that we should be talking about things that are more important to academic achievement. We should be talking about how we are going to support our teachers more. We should be talking about how we're going to support students and their mental health. And we should be talking about how we're going to uplift everyone and their wellness within our schools. So to me, again, this is just like a perfect example of what queer and POC kids go through every day.
Thanks for your input. We're going to go to Rod next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, I would.
Okay. What's your opinion on gender affirming care within our school system? And how do you feel about finding ways for LGBTQ folks to compete fairly in sports?
Well, there's a loaded questions, I would say, that somebody submitted. So first of all, I support equal opportunity education for all students, regardless of background, race, gender, sexual orientation, for all equal opportunity. Now, do we want to address the playing in sports activities in competitive balance in sports? That's what the person is really asking about. I talked with the superintendent and Katie Legacy, who's in charge of the high schools. And they said at this point, that hasn't been an issue in the Ben-LaPine School District, but it's probably coming. Let's be honest, that there's going to sometime come a point where a transgender student might want to participate in high school track, the female or the male team. And I'll just give my personal opinion on that. I would say that in competitive sports where there's a competitive balance, and it's a dual sport where there's two teams rather than just one team, like the football team or the wrestling team, I would not approve of anything that would destroy the competitive balance between athletes in the schools. So I would say that you should participate in the sport you were born in a competitive balance. I would be concerned we'd be violating Title IX and a number of things in there. So that's just my opinion.
All right. Thank you, Rod. And we are finally at Elizabeth for this question.
I believe public schools' mission is to welcome every single student as they present themselves in our doors. So that is inclusivity is critical. If you look at the Youth Truth survey that just came out, it is the LGBTQ kids that are struggling the most. And that has everything to do with bullying, harassment, belonging, all sorts of issues. It's hard to grow up in the first place, and it's hard to grow up when you feel isolated or not included. So I think focusing on that is extremely important. I think sports and gender affirming care, I'm not going to bother answering that because I don't see that as an issue in our schools or critical to the argument. What I think is much more important is establishing behavioral norms, particularly post-COVID. And that affects every single person in our school. It affects what teachers can accomplish in the classroom. It affects bullying, hate speech. You saw Dr. Cook send out that email to all parents last week, I guess it was. I would like to have seen, and that said, please talk to your kids about hate speech. I would like to have seen him say, and here are the consequences at the elementary, middle, and high school level. So even put more teeth behind it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. On that note, how about we talk about something kind of education related, just actually related to something Elizabeth brought up. She's the first one for this question as well. How can we get discipline back in the classroom?
Oh, I just had the most interesting conversation about this the other night. This is a real issue, and it is watering down our education. A high school diploma today, I assure you, does not mean what it did 10 years ago when I started teaching. we are able to accomplish less and less in the classroom. That has a lot to do with everything teachers are being asked to do, including, mental health and behavior and technology. We haven't talked much about that, which is also presenting itself in some pretty crazy ways. But anyway, we have to start back in the elementary school, reestablishing and teaching behavioral norms. So I would like to see the district adopt a unified behavioral standards. There's a code of conduct on that the district follows, but then it's willy-nilly. Then it's up to each building to enforce or come up with their own standards. And I really think we were so worried about kids after COVID being damaged, which they were. But I think as loving adults, we need to put back in place some natural and age-appropriate consequences. Someone brought up to me the other day that the restorative justice approach, which we've sort of been in the last 4 years, perhaps is just not being done well. And I'm open to that conversation too.
Hey, we are going to Rod with this one again, covering discipline returning to the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's a very important issue. And I'm glad Elizabeth brought it up the other day when we were discussing with you guys in the source. Hey, if you lose control in the classroom, you're dead meat as a teacher. And discipline in the classroom and maintaining discipline, that's the only way you can teach properly. So Dr. Cook told me 3 weeks ago, that's the #1 issue now in the classroom, keeping students on track without them causing disruptions. We need to, as a board, if any of you were elected to it, you need to come up with a policy to encourage and support the teachers and the principals to maintain, I would say, restorative order in the classroom rather than restorative justice. Do the best we can. And I know it's all come because of COVID. I saw it at CSEC in the 3 years I taught through COVID. A lot of the students coming in with the idea of hard work, showing up for class, attendance, and they were like, no way. So that is a very, very important issue for the board to work on. Give those teachers and principals more influence for getting discipline back in the classroom. I'm really glad Elizabeth brought that up the other night.
Thanks. Next on this question is Kina.
Yeah, so I like to step back a second. I'm glad the youth truth data came up because data is it's critical. It's it's real, and what we're seeing right now, both in middle school and in high schools, is that relationships are diminishing between peers, between students and their teachers. And I would beg to differ that could be a direct correlation to the behavior that we're seeing right now in our schools. Sorry, just thinking about, I was visiting a school the other day, and a teacher told a story about like why you don't throw pencils. Okay. And the teachers, basically one child was about to sit down and someone else was throwing the pencil, and it was a really bad accident. And then one of the students shared, yeah, but did you hear what happened in so-and-so's class? And then another student said, yeah, but I don't believe that. And then the teacher was like, well, why would you believe my story and not their story? And they're like, well, because that teacher kind of like makes us do things. It's like the way I see it is a culture of fear. Okay. That is not healthy, right?
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Sure, no problem.
We are going to Melissa with this one for the last person.
Right. Absolutely. So actually, one of the things that I really pushed as a board member over the last 4 years was to look at the experiences our kids are having. And part of that was because of the behaviors that some of our kids were enduring. quite honestly, and that our marginalized kids were really bearing the brunt of some of these behaviors. So I'm very concerned, and I'm also concerned about the teachers. I was just talking with a friend of mine who teaches high school who had a kid, swearing at him and threatening him, right? It's not okay. It's not okay what we're seeing in our classrooms. In terms of addressing the behaviors, I am a very firm believer that the people closest to the work have to be part of making the solutions. And so we have a task force. Task forces can be a dirty word, but we established a task force. They met today or yesterday. They're meeting 2 more times in the next 4 weeks to generate solutions, both short-term and long-term. But I'll just read to you a couple of the things they already said. 1, the COVID years quickly changed school culture. 2, many students lack a sense of belonging. And 3, there's a real deficit of social skills. We're working on developing a K-12 social emotional curriculum. We need to refine restorative practices. They are not being done correctly in a lot of cases. There's a lot of work to do, but the teachers have to be at the core of that conversation.
Thank you. This next question kind of, I think will help to kind of piggyback on some of the ideas that you all have brought. This one starts with Kina. What are the top needs of your school district?
Yeah. So the number one need is funding. So I think it's really, we could sit here and we could sit here and say we need XYZ, and it's, that's great. But the reality is that we asked for $10.3 billion and it's looking like we're going to get 9.9. That is not even operating at the service level that we are in right now. Okay. So what that means is that we have to be creative about where we're going to get this funding. Almost in a sense, our hands are tied, which is why, a lot of people have wondered, Kina's not a teacher. No, I'm not a teacher, but I am an expert in organizational development. I have worked with companies like Les Schwab, like Summit Health, like Whole Foods, and they hire me to tell them how to, 1, retain their employees. And this is all done through data and analysis. And they also want to know what keeps their employees there, what's engaging to them. So yeah, I would say funding is the biggest need. Again, I'm going to hone in on relationships. I've had the privilege to facilitate roundtables with students who are in high school and in middle school, and they want more interaction. They want teachers to see them as individuals and not just students.
Thanks. We'll go to Rod for this next person. So what are the top needs of your district?
Well, I don't know if it's just an economic need or an issues need, but I'd like to speak to what I see currently as needs of the district in a couple of areas. And one is I'd like to see the district, I think they have a need to improve the graduation rates between the member high schools in the Ben-LaPine School District. We're running right now, looked up the stats, 88% graduation rate, Ben-LaPine schools. Summit is at 96%. LaPine at 59%. We need to improve that, get that graduation rate up from all the schools. Mountain View's running 87, Bend High 88. So that would be a big need and issue that the board could do more for, I think. Second, I think there's still a gender gap issue in the Ben-LaPine school districts. We've seen this all over the country in community colleges, in universities, in high schools. Female students graduate at a higher rate than male students. Currently, male students in the Ben-LaPine school district are 5% below. So I'd like to see those issues addressed by the board. And the third one is we've talked about discipline, but also more security in the schools.
Thanks, Rod. So we are going to Elizabeth with this question next.
I would say the greatest need is to save the educators right now. Those are the people that spend the very most amount of time with kids. That is where relationships are formed. That's why kids go to school. That's why they are engaged in a subject matter. It's the buy-in from the teacher and feeling like the teacher believes in them. When we did look at the Youth Truth Survey data, it said that kids felt that teachers cared and felt supported, and yet they are leaving the industry. And when I say educators, I really mean the bus drivers that drop the kids off in the school, all the way through the kitchen folks and the janitors, as well as the teachers. I see this as really the heart of the issue. Getting behavior under control is one way to support teachers because that's exhausting. I would love to see a more strategic use of technology. I think we've used technology because we could, and we don't really know what it's doing to kids. We have social media gone wild. Other states are passing some really interesting laws about that right now that I'll be curious to see how it pans out. But any kid that has an iPad in front of them doesn't have to engage with his neighbors, doesn't have to have those awkward conversations. All of those things help teachers, and we need educators to stay in the industry because we cannot compete with salary.
We're out of time, Elizabeth. So we are going to Melissa now.
Great, thank you. I think the needs are exactly the same as what I originally ran on. I want to have more agency, more equity, more belonging in our schools. I think that all of those are paramount. Achievement levels, absolutely. One of the reasons I ran is because I felt like our literacy rates were way too low and they were dropping in the middle schools years. And I wanted to see those increase. We need to get our achievement levels up, and we need to absolutely get our graduation rates up. I do want to correct some misunderstandings in our community. Our graduation rates in the last 2 years have been the highest they've ever been in the history of Ben LaPine schools. So when some of the people running that don't come to debates say things like that, I want to make sure to put that on the record. Highest they've been. They need to go higher. One little piece on that LaPine rate, just so we know, a lot of kids got their GRE because they didn't see the sense of going to school. Way too low, unacceptable, but it was a little bit of a blip in LaPine's high school graduation rate. But anyway, so achievement, I want to continue to increase belonging, and I really want to have kids have agency. I want them to be able to leave the schools and actually have an idea of what their passion is, their purpose, and their plan for their future. It doesn't have to be their long-term career, but whether it's through their CTE program and going into an apprenticeship, whether it's making sure they've got their FAFSA and going on to college, kids need to leave our schools knowing what's next.
All right. Melissa, you mentioned literacy, and that is the nature of the next question. This one starts with Rod. What are the literacy challenges students face, and how would you see about addressing them?
I don't even understand the question. What the literacy rates you mean for?
The literacy challenges that students face, and what do you see as the solution?
I'm sorry, I don't know. So on that, I don't have a solution for the literacy rates that you're talking about. Would you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. What are the literacy challenges students face, and how would you address them?
I guess reading and writing in first grade, second grade, third grade, and I don't know as a board how I would address those. So sorry.
Okay. Next on this one is Elizabeth.
This is a challenging one. We have done a lot of different curriculum adoptions over the years in hopes that this is going to turn around. I think this is a societal problem, but despite that, we deal with kids as they walk into the classroom. So reading is key. We know we learn to read for the first 3 or 4 years, and then we switch to using reading to learn. So if it isn't grasped in those first few years, those kids really never catch up. So it is, and with COVID, we had a giant setback because turns out parents were doing their work online for their kids. Online school just was cheating, unfortunately. So, so getting engaging material, a really consistent, solid literacy program, and then carrying it all the way through. I know I taught high school, and kids read less and less and less. Textbooks are somewhat out of fashion. We're now reading passages instead of books. So it kind of goes back to the conversation we've already had about raising academic standards. And that also ties into the grading policy, which is watering down our schools, but I don't have time to talk about that right now. So reading, 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 and they've got to do it in the classroom so we know that they're actually doing it.
Okay, we're up with Kina next. What are the literacy challenges and what would you do to help them?
Yeah, I think when I look at programs in Ben LaPine Schools District and what's going well, I think it's there are a number of players. And so what I would like to see is I would like to see the library reaching out to younger families, younger children. I belong to a community where when my children were even like 1 year old, when they would go to their doctor visit, they would be given a book, either in English or Spanish. So I think, you know, I think we all agree that the younger and more exposure students have to reading, the higher their academic achievement is. Frankly, I cannot get my daughter to put down a book, even to brush her teeth, literally, or even to go to the grocery store. I'm like, this is a matter of safety. We're walking through a parking lot. But like I said, I would love to see more districts coming together because teachers can't do it all by themselves. They need support, and we have resources. I mean, I love the way Ben Parks and Rec provides after school care. Why can't we see more of that among the other districts?
Okay, and finally on this one is Melissa.
Great, thank you. I'm a little bit passionate about literacy, so hopefully I can keep this in 90 seconds. I actually think that there's a lot of work we can do, and I think there's a lot of untapped potential. One of the most important things we can do with kids to promote literacy is actually to promote their oral language development. There's study after study after study about the difference in achievement levels of kids who had high oral language, exposed to a lot of conversation in the home, doesn't matter which language, whatever the primary language of the home is, but a lot of research that shows how much more prepared those kids are. And so in terms of family engagement, being able to educate our community around the importance of oral language and then of reading with your kid or having your kid read to you is huge. It's something we're not doing enough of. In terms of our curriculum, I mentioned earlier, we just adopted a new curriculum for foundational skills based on the science of reading because too many kids were falling behind. And we were finding that actually we have a lot of kids who have learning needs in terms of reading, and they weren't being successful because of the way that we were teaching reading. So the science of reading. And then last, making sure that what we read is engaging for kids. Our secondary teachers have done a phenomenal job of developing new book sets that actually relate to kids' lives.
Thanks, everybody. So I'm going to go to the final question before we go into the 2-minute closing statement. So let's see, we are starting with Melissa on this one. What role should the community and parents play in supporting the education of children? You all have given some ideas, but let's hear some things again.
Yeah, absolutely. What I always say and what I always said, both as a teacher and as a school leader, is that parents are the third leg of that stool. It's the student, it's the family, it's the and it's the teacher. But we have to work together. And so what I would say is, like I just said, have conversation. Make your home word rich, not thumb rich on our devices, but word rich. Encourage your children to read with them every night. It's so important. Ask your kids specific questions, not how was your day, but ask them specific questions. What did you read today? What's a new concept you learned? Ask them specific questions when they get home. Most importantly, thank your teacher. Thank the bus driver. Thank the people you see that work in our district. We are seeing after COVID, all of the professions that had to bear the brunt of it, our nurses, our educators, they don't want to do, they're burnt out. They carried a huge load for our community, and they're not getting the thanks. They're not getting the appreciation. Instead, they're getting attacks about what they're teaching. They have master's degrees and people are wanting to look over their shoulder and see their lesson plans and make them post it online. Thank your teacher.
Okay.
Come to school board meetings, make a comment. We have tons of time available. Nobody shows up, please.
Sorry, I interrupted. We are going to Kina with this next. What role can the community and parents play in supporting the education of children?
Yeah, so I love this question because we already have programs in place within the community, and they happen to be organizations that I volunteer with, whether it's the Fathers Group and Juneteenth, whether it is the Youth Equity Leadership Summit, where middle schoolers, high schoolers, and even young recently graduates, they come. I'm trying to think, I know there's other ones out there, but there are programs in the community already, and they're doing well. And there's one student who came to the Youth Equity Leadership Summit, and then I didn't even know who this woman was, but then we have these monthly alliance meetings where teachers and parents and youth who are LGBTQ plus come together and talk about how to make schools safer for them. One parent came up to me and said, my daughter just went to the Youth Equity Leadership Summit. It was phenomenal. She came away feeling confident and feeling seen. And I know what that feels like. I went to Upward Bound. I had these amazing Black and brown educators who went to Harvard and Yale, and they saw something in me, and I will never forget that feeling.
Thank you. We are at Rod for this question. What can the community and parents do to support the education of children?
There are some simple steps I think parents of children in the school district can do. First, really require your kids to show up for school. Attendance is maximum in teaching in a classroom. Second, every day discuss what they did with their children when they came home from school. Discuss with them, find out what's going on. Third, reinforce schoolwork, homework. Sorry, I know a lot of people don't like that anymore, but that is very important for parents to hold their children accountable for the schoolwork, the homework, and not blame it on the teachers. Fourth, I would like them to see communication with the teachers on the ground right from the start. Go to all the meetings with the teachers, communicate with them, and then fifth, support the staff of the schools. And then sixth, if there's a problem, eventually work your way up and go to the board for the last problem. But just communicate, require attendance, get your kids to school. I always said when I was teaching all those years, there were three things that made you successful in the class. Show up. 1, attendance. 2, work hard. And 3, use the brain that God gave you or whatever creator gave you and work hard. Parents need to communicate that with their children.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks, Rod. Finally, Elizabeth on this one.
I like this question because really parents and community and education, it is a tripod. They all work together and most successfully when everyone is in sync. COVID was an unusual circumstance where we unwittingly had to push families away from the school building. And I think there needs to be a concerted effort then to bring them back into the fold. And that's taking a little work. I haven't seen that happen. I taught before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, and it's been significantly different after COVID. So I would, in an ideal world, the schools would be community centers. There would be events there every night. It would be a place where people feel comfortable, and there's meetings and there's groups. So would love to see that. I think there's some skepticism from some parts of the community that are always saying transparency of what's going on in the schools. However, I do want to point out that every parent can join their kids' Canvas courses. It's a little confusing because I've had to walk a lot of parents through it, but so you can see and play a role in your kids' education that way. Things like holding PTO meetings at night instead of during the day, so all parents that work can attend as well, would be great. And getting kids to school. Attendance is a huge issue, so would love to see that work done.
Thanks. I had no idea PTO meetings were during the day. Wow. So we are on to our final closing statements for everybody. You're going to get 2 minutes for these. Looks like first up for the closing statement is Elizabeth.
Goodness. Okay. I taught school in this district before COVID, during COVID, after COVID. It's just been the last 10 years, and it has truly been a joy to be in the classroom. I absolutely love working with students. However, I understand the reason teachers are leaving, educators are leaving, the reason we can't fill positions. And I really feel like that voice needs to be on the board to help reiterate that message. There was a critical board meeting February 14th where the BEA and in conjunction with all the teachers put together a huge document really outlining what life is like in the school building. And it seems like the board was really nodding their heads and understanding. But teachers have been jumping up and down for quite some time, and they haven't been heard. And after I stepped out of the classroom last June and I was struggling with what I'm going to do next, I took a year's leave. I substitute taught all fall and winter. That's kind of a hard gig, just for the record. And I really felt like I am the right person for this job, that I have a master's in education. I have experience in our community, in our schools. I'm very tied into the teaching community. And then I would love to lend that voice and do the work on the board. I know it's difficult work, but I would love to be that person. I also have experience just from my own children in the district, and almost successfully launching them out of the school system. So I'm excited to do the work. I'm passionate about it. And I have time because my kids will be gone and I'm just working a normal job, not teaching. So thanks for considering me. I look forward to doing the work.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next, we'll have Rod with his closing statement.
Great to be here with all of you. It's always fun listening to the candidates for office, and I think all of us for running. Hey, we're only in it for the money on the school board. So the big thing for me now in my life is, so I've taught 47 years. I started in 1975 in Bakersfield, California. I taught 3 years at Highland High. I had Merle Haggard's daughter in class my first year teaching down there. So been through a lot over the years. I moved to Bend, as I said, in 78, began teaching at Redmond High, taught there 32 years. You know you've taught a long time. And then I've been at COCC for the last 12 years when the district attorney of Deschutes County, Steve Gunnels, is an old student of yours. You know, he was in my law classes. You know, you've taught a long time when one of your students became the superintendent of the district you were still working in, Mike McIntosh out in Redmond. Shay Mickelson and I taught next to each other at Redmond High for years. I think that's really a great experience for me being on the board, that I've taught so long in the area and lived so long. I've been through many superintendents, many principals. Elizabeth, I think I've now counted 10,000 students I had over the years, okay? And I'm still teaching. I think it's really important that we have on the board somebody who's still recently been in the trenches in the classroom, okay? And I've always been a great bringer to people together and moderate in my views, and can unite that board in serving the community.
Thank you, Rod. Kina is up next.
So thank you again for this platform. I alluded earlier that professionally I worked with organizations like Les Schwab and Summit Health, and bring to light what keeps their employees engaged and how to retain their greatest asset. These are two critical areas that the school district very much needs to focus upon. My background in organizational development also provides a skill set needed to examine processes within our schools and across the district to determine how we can best shift resources in ways that would better serve our teachers and students. The Youth Truth Survey results show a devastating reality for students who are LGBTQ plus and or students of color in our schools. Like organizations, boards of directors have a greater impact and are more innovative when they include people from diverse backgrounds. We have educators on the board. Without your vote, to my knowledge, there won't be anyone on the board who truly knows the challenges of being part of the LGBTQ plus community and BIPOC communities in Central Oregon. I mean, two of the questions tonight were like perfect example. And those were even blatant. So you can imagine what other things the queer and BIPOC communities go through in Central Oregon. As I mentioned before, relationships are huge. I think some people throw around belonging and inclusion, but when you think about it, belonging and inclusion are actually both suicide and mass casualty prevention. You think about who were these kids who did atrocities in schools. They were kids who felt like they didn't belong. Anyways, you can learn more at kinafororegon.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Kina. Melissa, your closing statement.
Thanks. Again, I'm Melissa Barnes-Dholakia, and I hope tonight I've earned your vote. My final statements are, first, I'm a parent. Just a reminder, I've had 2 kids, I've benefited, and as a parent, I feel like I've really been able to see the places where our district shines and where it needs to continue to improve. Second, I am an educator. I'm not going to go into toe-to-toe battle on whose experience was harder. I will say that I spent 10 years building a public school district in East Oakland. I'm from Oakland's my hometown, East Oakland in California. And during my tenure in those 10 years, I closed the achievement gap. All of our students were marginalized students. These were students of color who were living in poverty, the majority of whom were English language learners, and we closed the achievement gap. We graduated 5 classes, 96% of whom went on to college. That was our focus then. We've shifted a little bit now to CTE, and I say we because I still serve on their board as well. I'm on two public school boards, but I am an educator, and I bring that education. My school district was not a drill and kill. It was innovative. It was agency. It was built on a really strong culture that engaged families. It used the expeditionary learning model for anyone who wants to geek out with me. But it was a fantastic school. And we closed the achievement gap. It can be done. I never asked for something that I haven't done myself. Restorative practices, we did it ourselves. I am an involved community member before I even thought of running for school board. I served on the school site council for my child's school. I serve on the board of directors for Cascade School of Music. And then once elected to the board, I've been all in. Funding is tight. That's why I jumped in and shared our school bond effort, which passed with the highest rating ever, 60%. And I am endorsed by the OEA, BEA, AFL-CIO, AFSCME, Stand for Children, and I want to make it really clear that I ask for them to approve me. I have never taken $1 from any PAC. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the questions and input from the candidates. Thanks to each of you candidates for participating in this League of Women Voters of Deschutes County and City Club of Central Oregon, Ben LaPine's School Board Candidate Forum. It's been really a pleasure to hear all of your ideas and thoughts and responses to these questions. To those of you watching out there, your vote is your voice. Make sure to get your ballots in by May 16th so your voice can be heard. The next League of Women Voters of Deschutes County and City Club of Central Oregon Candidates Forum is on Wednesday, May 3rd for the Central Oregon Community College Board candidates for zones 5 and 6. It will be live streamed at 6 p.m. You can go on the City Club website to submit questions up to 48 hours prior for each of the candidate forums. And the forums can always be streamed on the City Club of Central Oregon's YouTube channel, and recording links of the forums are available at both the League of Women Voters and the City Club of Central Oregon's websites. I'm Nicole Vulcan. I'm editor of The Source. It's been my pleasure to moderate this panel tonight. Thanks everybody for watching.